Hey everybody, welcome to English Composition. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about rhetoric, but specifically we're going to be looking at the appeals. Um, so we are going to jump right into this and go straight to work here. So uh, remember that the appeals that we had already spoken about were ethos, pathos, logos, and we're going to give a little bit of attention this time to the appeal kairos. And the reason for that is because kairos can be very vital in situations of especially rhetorical situations. So let's start things off with what ethos is. So ethos, that's this Greek word, right, for character. Ethos, if you can think about it, is kind of like often mistaken as an appeal to ethics, but not quite, right? Uh, Though ethics are an aspect of a person's organization's ethos, ethics aren't always the only component of character or authority or expertise. There's celebrity and other endorsements are often based on ethos. Ethos is why in America, like places like the American Dental Association endorsement for a toothpaste, right, is more powerful and generally holds more sway than the endorsement from a non-medical professional. At the same time, though ethos as it relates to advertising, it's a bit complex. Sometimes people or organizations are going to have a strong ethos, not because they're professionals per se in a given field, such as dentistry, but because they may demonstrate the ideal results or benefits of a product. So one example might be, let's take Sofia Vergara for example, right? Vergara is a popular actor, and you know her from Modern Family. Her ethos as one of the world's most beautiful people makes her an especially useful spokesperson for any kind of array of personal care products, right? In part because she's known not only as an actor, but as an attractive person. So it's really no surprise that she's a spokesperson for a variety of cosmetic and personal products, from CoverGirl makeup to Head and Shoulders shampoo. The Head and Shoulders shampoo, though, is really where her ethos kind of really shines through, because you've got this dandruff shampoo and generally flaky scalps not associated with beauty. By having Vergara star in Head and Shoulders commercials for over 20 years, the company really relies on Vergara, uh, her ethos as a confident, beautiful woman to combat embarrassment that some people, perhaps particularly women, may feel when they're faced with their own dandruff and flaky scalp and need for medicated shampoos and things like that. So Vergara's emphasis is on how long her family has used Head and Shoulders, and it even suggests that perhaps some of Vergara's success in the beauty arena is due to Head and Shoulders. It really skips over the entire concept of any kind of genetic relationship or anything, and really lends credence to the product. Moving on, pathos. So originally, pathos described appeals to the audience's sensibilities, right? Pathos, or what some consider a pathetic appeal, it generally means that we're going to be appealing to emotions, whether they are positive or negative. Okay, so a rhetor may appeal to emotions that an audience already has about a subject, or a rhetor may elicit, emotions, right? The emotions are all those feelings that so change men as to affect their judgment. So Aristotle said in 1378 that emotions are all those feelings that so change men as to affect their judgments, and that are also attended by pain or pleasure. Such are anger, pity, fear, and the like, with their opposites. We must arrange what we have to say about each of them under three heads. Take for instance, the emotion of anger. Here we must discover one, what the state of mind of angry people is. Two, uh, who the people are with whom they usually get angry. And three, on what grounds they get angry with them. So, as Aristotle argues, emotions are central to our decision making, even if we're not consciously aware of it. If a rhetor desires to persuade a particular audience, then the rhetor must understand the ruling emotions regarding the topic and the specific audience. What makes the audience angry or pleased, um, who or what is involved in producing or evoking that emotional state, and why does that particular audience become angry or pleased within a specific context. Knowing answers to these questions are going to help a rhetor better prepare an argument and provide a basis for developing evidence and identifying counterarguments. Pathos appeals can sometimes be overwhelming and dominate an argument because emotion in general can be overwhelming. When emotions are strong enough, they can overtake logic and reason. People have often, history is, you know, burgeoning with examples of people who have made illogical decisions through emotion. Political campaigns are excellent examples of pathetic appeals or pathos appeals. Um, Political ads will often play on fears and hopes of different demographics. For example, a political ad focused aimed at retired and elderly voters may claim, that a candidate is planning on eliminating social support programs such as Medicare or drastically cut Social Security benefits. These types of ads don't need to contain facts or evidence. For that matter, they're not even legally constrained to do so. Of their actions to be useful and successful because they really just rely on the fears and the worries that the intended audience already has about financial and medical security. Remember, pathos is about that emotional state of the audience, not the rhetor. Okay, it's not about your own personal feeling. It is to an extent, but when you're speaking, when you're the rhetor, it's entirely up to you to understand their emotional state. And then we come to the appeal logos. All right, and logos is an appeal to logical reason. Logos is about the clarity, consistency, and soundness of an argument, from the premise and structure to the evidence and the support. A rhetor appeals to logos by making reasonable claims and supporting those claims with evidence, such as statistics or data and facts. However, it's logical and reasonable arguments and evidence are not universal across audiences, contexts, cultures, and times. They differentiate. What an audience considers reasonable claims and adequate evidence is influenced by an audience's values, their beliefs, all the things that go with their cultural setup, their makeup. And further, data and facts may evolve over time as we obtain more evidence, information, and data. For example, some people believe the Federal Drug Administration is part of a conspiracy to cover up evidence that common vaccines cause a variety of neurological, psychological, physiological disorders, despite extensive evidence, scientific evidence from all around the world that demonstrates common vaccines are safe. The scientific evidence is not reasonable or logical, and therefore not persuasive for the conspiracy audience, because the evidence may come from manufacturers of vaccines or FDA sponsored studies or researchers or studies with all that have ties and connections to the FDA or other government agencies, Big Brother. However, for other audiences, such as those who are just simply unsure about the actual benefits or reasons for vaccines, the same studies and data may be quite persuasive. And that said, for an appeal to logos, they don't necessarily need to be truthful arguments. There are, several examples of faulty syllogisms out there. Case in point comes from an episode of Family Guy, if anybody's ever seen it. It's where Peter Griffin experiences the effects of drinking Red Bull and suddenly becomes addicted to Red Bull, but he runs out. So he decides he's going to make his own in the kitchen. And what he ends up doing is mixing kerosene and a bunch of different little ingredients to try to make it. Well, Brian Griffin, his dog, comes in and he says, "You're gonna, what are you doing? You're making a mess. It's not good. What you're doing is poison." And of course, Peter Griffin makes the faulty syllogism, and this is the point. And he says, Red Bull is fuel, kerosene is fuel, therefore Red Bull is kerosene. And common sense tells you that is absolutely incorrect. That is not true. That is still considered uh, a, a pill to logos, unfortunately. So it's up to us to determine how to use these and how to use them ethically and morally. And then finally, we have kairos. Okay, kairos is the Greek word for time. In Greek mythology, Kairos was the youngest son of Zeus, and he was the god of opportunities. In rhetoric, Kairos refers more to the opportune moment or the appropriateness for persuading a particular audience about a particular subject. Kairos depends upon a strong awareness of the rhetorical situation, and Kairos is where, why, and when of persuasion. Uh, for example, nearly all your op-eds out there and political essays are kairotic. Um, the rhetors work to relate their ideas and messages to whatever is happening in the news and popular culture. Um, you have to understand um, that, for example, um, when the original Spider-Man movie was going to come out, it was set to come out at a specific date in 2000, I think it was 2001. Um, Unfortunately, around September 11th, 2001, that is when the World Trade Centers were bombed. Well, Spider-Man um, actually portrayed the World Trade Centers within the background in the original, and the the film industry or the filmmakers of that of Spider-Man made a kairotic choice to postpone the deployment of that movie, for good reason. And but that's just an example of that appropriateness, that opportune moment, and you have to know when it's opportune and when it's not opportune to say certain and specific things. With that, I'm going to conclude our discussion here real quick about the rhetorical tropes that we're going to focus on within the class. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Um, Other than that, we'll see you next time.